Welcome back to Mainstream PC, everyone. My name is Julian, and in this video I shall present to you my build for May 2020. As with most of my builds, I try to follow a specific theme that I pick. This month the theme is based on a question that I read online. I think it was in the Build a PC Facebook group, where somebody asked if in 2020 can you build a gaming PC that delivers a smooth 1440p gaming experience for less than $500 US. So I got out there online and I checked like used parts, I checked new parts, and I put something together that I believe fits the bill, something that I would use myself on a budget, where I can say this is going to deliver an enjoyable experience, not something where I have to make too many compromises or take too many compromises, or just feel like I have to go for cheap parts or cheap power supply or something like that in order to match the price. This is something where with each of these parts I'm very confident that they deliver an adequate experience, let's put it that way. So let me start with the used parts first, and then we get to the new parts after that. So let's start with the graphics card. I picked the Vega 56, and this case again from Gigabyte, just like in my last build, but last build it was an RX 5700. This is a dual fan model. When I picked it up I was a little bit worried about coil whine, so I had the guy test it or run it on his test bench where I picked it up. I also tested it here on my test bench just to make sure that the noise is not annoying, because a lot of people have said that that they have had coil whine issues with their Gigabyte Vega 56. I haven't had any issues with this card, so I'm quite happy about the purchase, and I guess I got lucky in that regard. We're going to be powering the build with one of my all-time favorites, the Cooler Master G650M. It's quite readily available here, used. I think it was used a lot during mining operations, so there's a lot of them out there. Obviously you might get lucky, you might not get lucky, specifically with mined units when it comes to longevity. I've not had any issues with these power supplies, and I've used 4 of them in the last year alone in builds, and none of them have failed since then. So I'm very, very happy with the semi-modularity of it. 80 plus bronze, 650 watts peak wattage. It's just, and for the price that you can get it here, it's just an amazing power supply. In addition, it doesn't have ketchup and mustard cables, yellow, black, red. It's got sleeved cables, so even when you use it in builds, it doesn't make them ugly, or you don't have to wrap electrical tape around it just to hide the cables or something. So it's very nice in that regard as well. For motherboard, we're using, I don't have an original box for it, so it's an ASRock B450 Fatality Gaming K4. A B450 board with a nice feature set. This one actually has 2 M.2 slots even. Dual channel memory, 4 DIMM slots, nothing amazing. Good voltage regulator modules, so decent power delivery. That's always one of my biggest points that I look for when I pick motherboards. Although we're not going to need it with the combination of CPU that we're pairing it with. Even a worse one would do just fine. We have 2 sticks of 4 gigs each, so only 8 gigs in total, but for our goal it should be fine, of Vengeance LPX memory from Corsair. This is a 3000 MHz kit, so we're still having decent memory speed, so our CPU won't suffer from it. And now we're already getting to the new parts. One is the CPU, the Ryzen 5 2600. I didn't opt for 3600 because the price premium here at least is so high that it would not have fit the bill. I also think it would have been an overkill for what we're pairing it with. So the choice was relatively easy. And it's a new unit, still sealed, so that's nice. And we get the stock cooler, which we will actually use because it's a budget build. So we don't actually have any extra spare change for any aftermarket cooling. And this one is a particular one. So this is also a new piece of hardware. Looks like it's not because it doesn't have a box, because this is an OEM SSD. This is an Toshiba XG6, which are OEM drives only sold to notebook manufacturers and or some other OEMs making custom built PCs, or not custom built PCs, but like pre-built PCs, like the Acers and stuff that you see out there, workstation PCs usually, some of them mini ATX. And I usually try to go for decent SSDs, and this time around I got quite lucky when I stumbled upon these, because I read reviews on them that they're doing actually quite well. Usually OEM drives are not trying to really beat the performance charts. They're just, 256 gigabyte SSD. It's just so you can print it on your label. When you sell your unit, it doesn't really matter how well it performs. But these actually seem to be doing fairly well, like actually competing with other named brands. Obviously, it's not a Samsung 970 Evo or something like that, but it's somewhere in the middle of the pack when it comes to random read-write performance and latency. And even longevity. The IOPS on this are not like under 100,000 or something. They're actually, I believe it's 150,000 IOPS for the 256 gigabyte model that I'm holding here. So that's pretty good. So even longevity should not be an issue with this drive. So this was a lucky grab. And for our last part that is new, I decided not to go with a used case, but I actually wanted to have a look at this case. So let me push the Vega down so I have a little bit of space to show you. This is the Nubwo Mjölnir. Okay, not a name brand in the US or anything like that, but here in, I believe in all of Southeast Asia, they're fairly well known. And what surprised me is the feature set on this thing. So it's got a tempered glass side panel, it's got a PSU shroud, it comes with 3 RGB fans, albeit it's not like you don't have a hub, or you don't have like real ARGB via header. I think they call it Spectrum RGB if I'm not mistaken, which is basically you just cycle through different modes on a button on the case. But for the price, you cannot argue with this thing. I did take it out already because I was quite curious as to how they keep the cost so low on this to actually still make a profit. Because with PSU shroud and everything, there's actually a decent amount of material used. And another thing that I quickly want to say is a reason why I picked it, mesh front. It's becoming popular now, and I love them because the airflow path is open from front to back to the top. Everything can flow nicely. and the front fans don't suffocate. Excellent. But in terms of build quality, of course, they had to do something to make it work. The sheet metal is fairly thin. I think that's where they're essentially managing to cut cost. So if this falls off your table, it's probably done for. That might be an exaggeration, but that might be true for most other cases as well. But I did notice distinctly that the sheet metal is thinner than, for example, on the Deepcool Matrix 50, which is also a relatively budget case that I used in my last build. But also didn't come with fans, and it was still more expensive than this one. So it explains how they managed to keep the cost down. But overall, already having looked at it, it's not bad. Well worth the money in my opinion. But we'll see after the build how I feel about it, because it might just be some bad surprises once I start building in it. With that, let's get into the video, and I hope you enjoy the building process as much as I will. See you in the outro. And we're back, ladies and gentlemen. As you could see, it was a pretty easy build, very vanilla. My biggest gripe with the build is that I didn't have an I/O shield. I still don't have an I/O shield. But for the price that I paid for that motherboard, I was expecting no box, and I completely forgot about asking about the I/O shield in the first place. So that one's on me, I guess. It looks terrible from the back, but from the front and the side, you don't really even notice it. But it is what it is. It's a budget build and with second-hand parts. So talking about price point, let's talk about the individual components and how much I paid for them. Since it is a bang for the buck build, value build, budget build, that was the whole point, to show that I can stay under 500 US dollars. Let's go over them real quick. The SSD, the XG6 from Toshiba, cost me $35. So did the power supply, as well as the 2 sticks of 4 GB RAM, the LPX Corsair memory at 3000 MHz, and something else. Oh yeah, the motherboard without an I/O shield also cost me $35. So that's 4 components that cost me $35. Then there's the case, which cost me $40. The R5 2600, which was also new and also cost me $115. And lastly, but not least, the GPU, the Vega 56 used, cost me $185. So that should bring the total to around, I think, 480 US dollars, which is just shy of our $500 mark. And with that being said, let's see if this puppy posts, because otherwise this was all for naught. Okay. I did not hit the power switch. Okay, power cycling, RYZEN. Quite surprised that it straight up booted. I believe there are no LEDs, diagnostic LEDs on this motherboard, so if it's messed up, I won't even be able to tell right now. Very interesting. Holding down the power button and nothing is happening. Oh well, I guess I'm gonna get to troubleshooting this thing. It's not doing anything, and the power switch, I can hold it down as much as I like, should be connected to the right headers. It's not doing jack. So maybe I got a bad board. That would suck. And we're back, ladies and gentlemen. As you can probably tell, it's a little bit later in the day. I've already had a few cups of coffee. And I'm at a point where I have to assume it's one of 2 components that is causing the issues, or the no post. I strongly assume it's the motherboard. The second option would be the CPU. So essentially, the symptom that I'm observing is if I power on the PSU, the power supply, the board immediately starts all fans, doesn't do a power cycle or anything like that, just keeps going. The power, hitting the power switch has no effect, hitting the reset switch has no effect. I've cleared the CMOS, I've replaced the CMOS battery, I've ran the thing without RAM installed, and it still did the same thing. So nothing on the board, literally just the CPU and the motherboard. It still does the same thing. Tried a different power supply, my Seasonic Prime on my test bench, still does exactly the same thing. Unfortunately, I have no way of testing the CPU right now. I don't have another motherboard that can accommodate it to verify. But yeah, essentially, I think there's a good chance that the BIOS is broken on this board, that maybe the previous owner was trying to flash the BIOS for Ryzen 3000 ready BIOS. Would make sense with when he bought it. And maybe that's the reason he sold it, because he borked the board and just didn't tell me about it. Could be. Either way, the board is still in warranty, and so is the CPU, in case it is the CPU. However, the board is bought at a retailer here that mostly operates out of malls, and with the current situation, most or all malls are closed. So I'm not sure where I'm gonna be able to bring this board to get it RMA'd. But I hope I'll find a way, or I'll find an outlet that they have maybe outside that still, you know, has people working in it. So until then, this build is unfortunately on ice, so to speak. There will be a part 2. I'll either replace the motherboard entirely, or I'll wait for the RMA. Let's see what comes in more handy. Of course, if I replace it, I'll try to replace it with something of equal value, so we don't reach our $500 budget. And yeah, I hope you're looking forward to the next video, in which I hopefully will be presenting a fully functional computer. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please like, share, and subscribe. If you didn't like the video, please leave a comment. Let me know why you didn't like the video. Please don't leave the comment that I didn't like the video because the motherboard was not working. I understand that. Other than that, sharing helps me out the most, so please feel free to share with your friends if you feel it's something they would enjoy. And I shall see you again next time in the next video, hopefully part 2.